Hey, thank you all for joining us today. We're just waiting on quorum. I think we may have it right now with Senator Ginn.
She said we do. That's right.
Hey, thank you all for joining us here today. We're going to go ahead and get started with the Appropriations Committee this morning. We know we need to be out of here by 9 a.m. for the House Rules Committee. And I'm going to ask Chairman Dolezal if he doesn't mind leading us in invocation.
Good morning, everyone. Let's pray. Father, we thank you for the gift of life today. Thank you for the opportunity to serve your people, and pray that we would do so with wisdom, honor, and dignity. In your name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Chairman. Going to go a little out of order. Senator Hostetler, would you like to go first and present your bill? I know we might have a time limit. Yep. And then we'll go to the budget, and then we'll take Representative Leverett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This bill is brought on behalf of the Department of Labor, and it would, there's been quite a few issues over there the last few years. I know we had some frustrations in the past, and there's still work to be done, and this is really just a short-term temporary thing, but what it would do would let some money get collected that the DOL doesn't have the staff to collect right now, and would provide some funding to help do that. And in return, the DOL would keep in their budget 20% of what they collect, which would help pay for the people to collect it, number one. And number two, we've got these unemployment career centers that the funding is going to run out, and they'll, under the current budget anyway, the career centers would be closing about August 1st, and it would help keep them open. Now, you guys know how I like sunsets around here, so we've got a 2-year sunset on this where we would evaluate it and see if it's done. So you'll see line 14 is where we make a exception to the code, and then if you go on to line 25 is where it talks about retaining up to 20% of these funds. So it's a little bit of a unique thing. I know we did something similar with the DOT in the past, but this is a very small measure, but I think it would let some funding be there. And if you look down on lines 36 and 37, that the commissioner has agreed that any of these records will be available for review anytime by the General Assembly, as well as the state accounting officer and the state auditor. So I think he's going to be open and transparent, and hopefully he can collect these funds with his staffing and make it a win-win for us. And I'll entertain any questions.
You got a couple of questions. Senator Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you just kind of share with us the amount of dollars that everyone is expecting to collect with this 20%?
Well, there's about, I think, $80 to $100 million out there potentially, but I think some of this is old. So I don't really personally have a good handle on how much of that is actually going to get collected. But again, whatever we collect will be more than we're getting right now. If it's, if it's 10 million, it's money we're not getting right now. If it's 50, it's even better. So that's the potential that's out there.
Senator Hickman.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for that answer. Also, do you have any idea how long has this been going on? I've heard as high as $100 million. Is this over like 2 or 3 years or 5 or 6 years? Do we have any clue?
This is over a number of years that it's sort of accumulated, and since we've got to be out of here at 9, I don't think we can talk about the past history of the DOL. It certainly had its problems. We had some previous meetings, of course, with the past commissioner, but it's been over a number of years, and some of it may be too old to collect, but I think some of it is very collectible.
I just want to clear, this has nothing to do with the new commissioner.
Absolutely not.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, one more question. Senator Ginn.
Ready for make a motion to do pass?
Motion do pass. Is there a second? There's a second from Senator Hickman. Any further discussion? All those in favor of, make sure I've got the LC right here. LC 365723. Is that what you got, Mr. Chairman?
That's what I have. Yes, sir.
All those in favor of Senate Bill 475 LC 365723, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Can't turn him off there. Just makes him more active, doesn't it? Maybe so. We'll leave it. Now that we got the Senate bills out of the way, let's take up a House bill, House Bill 915, sponsored by Representative Burns, sorry, Mr. Speaker. And I'll present that for us right quick. House Bill 915 by committee substitute is the amended FY24 budget. It's a budget of $37.5 billion based on $35.1 billion of projected total state treasury receipts, plus $2 billion of unreserved, undesignated surplus, as well as our typical QBE, Quality Basic Education Funding, mid-year adjustments that are permissible from the existing reserves. The projected state general fund receipts of $30.45 billion are 9.4% above those contemplated by the FY24 general appropriations budget. The themes in this budget are similar to themes you've seen in previous amended budgets. They're true up of formula and healthcare expenses. And they also reach a little bit differently this year because of our unprecedented collections to allow the state to catch up with investments in certain fields. Information technology modernization that enhances services, case management, and cybersecurity. Long-term and long-needed building renovations and construction that is done without assuming more debt that otherwise will be approached through a bond funding and general budgets. And these also, in this amended budget, we're able to address physical liabilities that will ultimately assist in long-term cost avoidance. The last theme I think you'll see in this year's amended budget is that we equip state employees and state law enforcement entities with needed resources. Of the $37.5 billion, you'll see one line that's repeated throughout almost every section, and that's a $1,000 pay supplement for all state employees, state teachers, and regents. The governor announced this in the December of 2023. The House supported it, the governor's budget supported it, our budget supported it as well. I want to tell you what's not in that. What is not in that $1,000 is a pay increase or a supplement to any elected official. We are all excluded categorically from that. What is included is a $1,000 pay supplement to all those who are paid with federal funds. That's something we have not done in the past. We've had a big battle in the past over supplanting federal funds, but we have gone along with that $1,000 increase, even when the positions were funded with federal funds or other funds in this year's amended budget. After hitting those kind of big themes, let's dive right into it. You always know Section 1 of your budget will always be the Senate. In the Senate's phase of the amended budget, the Senate met increases just to match the House's increases. We represent the same number of people, so we put the same dollar increases in our budget that the House had in theirs. In the courts, you'll see that one of the things that I think I'm the most excited about in this budget is what we were able to do in the juvenile court judges line item. Over the past 2 budget cycles, we have talked about dependency cases and permanency cases and whether or not there was a backlog. There's a debate over that, and even defining backlog has proven to be problematic. But what was not problematic and what we thought was clear was a supplement we put in place to try to move cases along. That supplement language somehow disappeared, and there was some ambiguity about whether or not it still existed. The Senate budget allows and matches the House adds in this program for about $170,000. But also adds $650,000 in technology improvements at the AOC to allow for a universal technology that will be able to show us how long cases have been pending, how long children have been waiting on termination of their parental rights so they can be placed for adoption, or how long they've been waiting to see whether or not we can move along on a unification plan. That, to me, that $650,000 is, to me, the most exciting thing you'll see in this amended year budget. There are other things too, obviously, and you can't spend $37.5 billion and only talk about $650,000. At the Department of Administrative Services, you'll see some of the bigger expenditures. The state promotes efficiencies and the Senate goes along with them with $158 million to redesign our state's human capital and financial systems. I want you to look at that line, though, that $158 million. That's just a partial payment. Over time, that will be $542 million, so that the legislature will have the ability to look inside all programs, including Regents, to see what's being paid and when, so that we can have an accounting system where we can truly be stewards of the dollars that we've been entrusted with by the taxpayers of Georgia. There's $5.5 million in that same program for the Department of Labor for benefit, tax, and appeals processes improvements. And at DOAS, you'll see $248 million for long-term cost avoidance by investments in our property, workers' comp, and liability risk pools. Next section you'll come to will be the Department of Agriculture. The Senate included $5 million increase for capital project needs over the House budget for the state farmers market, and we added back certain funding for the EV charger station pilot pursuant to Senate Bill 146. We did, however, disagree with the House funding that they added for Senate Bill 220. The Senate also was able to recoup savings found in the governor's disregards for the Georgia Ag Expo Authority, and we exceeded the governor's position, but were slightly below the House position on new vehicles for the Department of Ag. At the Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Disabilities, the Senate agreed with the House on transportation alternatives pilots, but we did so in a slightly lesser amount. And we increased funds to complete the Gateway Child and Adolescent Crisis Stabilization Unit in Savannah, and we paid for this through a reallocation of direct care support funds. At the Department of Community Affairs, the Senate agreed with a House add of $2.5 million and matched that in community improvement grants for a total of $5 million. At the Department of Community Health, the Senate trued up numbers to match expected projected expenditures in the ABD and LIM programs. We also matched House adds for AHEC and lupus, and we pushed a Cobb County Federally Qualified Health Center into the FY25 budget, where we already have base funding sitting there waiting. At the Healthcare Workforce Board, the Senate reiterated its position for studies on licensure and evaluation gaps in healthcare staffing for neurology, psychiatry, rheumatology, and endocrinology. We also took a underutilized rural physician grant program and repurposed it into a loan repayment program for nursing school faculty. Again, last item at the Healthcare Workforce Board would be the Senate reiterating its position on the OTPT rate increases for providers in children's intervention services. At the Department of Corrections, the Senate trimmed the healthcare contract slightly, but we agreed with the $450 million addition to spend a total of $900 for single cells at a new state prison facility. The Senate also dramatically increased state spending on capital repairs, $135 million, a match that was also supported by the governor and the House. And we made a huge down payment on another initiative that I feel is extremely important in this year's budget, and it's been championed by the senator from the 56th, for a development of a program to shut down all cell signals at state prisons by 2026, with the first projects to begin immediately. At the Department of Economic Development, the Senate supported one-time funding for security measures concerning Atlanta's chosen position as a site for the FIFA 2025 games. That's $29.25 million. We trimmed rents at one of our highest rent districts in the state, and we stuck with the House on funding for new vehicles. We also instructed the department to use sponsorships to host a symposium concerning the deployment of hydrogen energy applications, which we do consider to be an exciting new field. At the Department of Education, the Senate did not follow the House ads for community and schools, but we did direct the department to use 10 of the roughly $11 million they have remaining in ESSER funds that expire this fall for a project that supports character education in the classroom. Character and leadership development took a major hit with the lack of social interactions during the COVID-19 pandemic, and these funds, these $10 million in funds, have a one-to-one match, private match, that will push $20 million into character education for our schools. The Senate supported the state charter supplement increase of $27.7 million for a total of $231.3 million now on that state charter supplement line, and we supported the $100.7 million for midterm adjustments for growth to the QBE formula. At the Employee Retirement System, the Senate supported the governor and the House add for $500 million to increase the funded ratio to improve long-term viability for our state's pension system. The state also left $26.7 million in the base for potential use this year. At Forestry, the Senate supported an ad for $8.6 million to update the radio network. We also included language concerning new hairs they wanted to buy, hoping we can find some efficiencies in that radio network that will allow them to purchase those as well. There was a caption change at the Governor's Emergency Fund, and at the Department of Human Services, you'll see that the Senate agreed with a House ad for the Long-Term Care Ombudsman Program. There's a contract that DHS has with Equifax and Talix for contract. It's a contract for eligibility verification. There's an additional increase there for $2.061 million. The Senate went along with this ad, but they do want to serve notice that this line is going to get additional scrutiny in coming cycles. At Voc Rehab, the Senate supported one forklift, not two. And at the Department of Insurance, we supported a $134 million investment in the state reinsurance program. That's a program we hope helps regulate the cost of private insurance plans to make premiums more affordable, and $16 million at the state insurance, at the state exchange. At the Georgia Bureau of Investigations, the Senate went along with improvements for the medical examiner's offices, but reiterated our support for the expansion and renovation of the Macon facility for $3.1 million, and you'll see that appear in your capital projects in the back. At CJCC, the House funded one SANE coordinator for each center. The Senate went along with this as well. It was an issue that we talked about last year. And I think it's appropriate also now to mention that outside of this budget process, the governor has announced yesterday an add of $26 million for the victim services grants, which would now bring that to a total of $94 million granted outside the ARPA program to victim services. At the Department of Juvenile Justice, the Senate agreed, or the Senate committee substitute agrees with the spending for maintenance, but we reduced funds for a music studio. At the Georgia Department of Labor, we agreed with the governor and the House on the one-time funds for $5.5 million in technology upgrades. We also added $2.5 million for matters related to unemployment insurance. At the Department of Law, the Senate's committee substitute supports one-time equipment for gang prosecution, cyber crimes, and organized retail crimes for a total of $103,000. And at the Department of Natural Resources, the Senate committee substitute proposes increased one-time funds for outdoor recreation and state park renovations across our state at $14 million. At the Department of Public Safety, the Senate supported most of the House and Governor's ads, including a $5.1 million for one-time funds to replace weigh-in motion equipment at our MCCD facilities. The one exception with the Governor's and House numbers that the Senate took on DPS would be there was a request for an add of $1.995 million. The Senate for a hangar, we instead allocated $1 million to bring the total for that hangar to $5 million. At the Public Service Commission, there have been 3 projects that the Commission has requested over many, many years. $250,000 for customer response system upgrades, $100,000 to upgrade phone systems, and $25,000 to audit Universal Access Fund contributors. The Senate supported all 3 positions. At Regents, the Senate moved to a different position on one-time funding for eminent scholars, funding $6.25 million, and reduced the funding for equipment from $5 million to $2 million, while still supporting the program. The Senate agreed with the House funding for one-time funding to the Georgia Holocaust Commission, but focused the $2 million instead on exhibits at the Anne Frank Education Center. At the Department of Revenue, there's $300,000 that the Senate committee substitute allocates to migrate to cloud-based services and $108,000 to replace 3 vehicles. There were 3 requests, 4 total from the Secretary of State's office. One was about the power supplies. You'll hear us talk about that later. The 3 others were $110,000 for watermarked ballot paper, $107 million for increased postage due to redistricting and the need to mail out new precinct cards, and then $5 million for a third-party ballot text auditing technology. The Senate funded 2 of these, the watermarked paper and the redistricting precinct cards, and is awaiting confirmations from the Secretary of State's office before agreeing to fund the ballot text auditing technology. At Student Finance, some savings were realized by the Senate through decreased utilization of the Hope Scholarship the Public Safety Memorial Grant, the Hero Scholarship, and tuition equalization grants. Those aren't reductions. Those are really just matching head counts in those programs and whether or not those funds were used there. If they weren't, we repurposed them and rolled them back out in the amended. At our technical colleges system, after much discussion, the Senate agreed to increase funds to meet existing training obligations at line 341.3 for $4.7 million. The Department of Transportation, you'll see a whole lot of changes, but let me walk you through what they do. It doesn't, all the monies that the House or the governor had placed in transportation remain there. We just realigned the chairs on the deck a little bit. You'll see the Senate proposal places $98 million into airport aid. We matched the House half for a total of $8 million for state-owned rail lines. We placed $250 million into the LMIG program, but moved the LMIG program over into the LARP program because the LMIG program requires a 10% match that the governor and the appropriators agree could cause an issue this late into a budget year. We do have assurances from the Department of Transportation, however, that they're going to use that LARP, they're going to use the LMIG formula for distribution the same as though it were in, even if it is in the LARP program. The Senate budget also took, and realigning those chairs a little bit, left $500 million for the entire statewide freight and logistics program, $50 million in capital maintenances with assurance from the DOT that this is enough with a federal match to get us through this budget year, and put the balance of that money into capital construction for congestive matters, to fight congestion across our state. This year's budget, amended budget particularly, is different from most. You know that right now we're usually truing up things, and when we get to the big budget, you're looking at the bond package, and I usually lose the attention of most of you as you flip to the back really quickly to see what schools, technical colleges, or libraries may be funded in your district. But this year is different. You see, the state of Georgia, because of the leadership of Governor Kemp and the House, Chairman Hatchett and Director Dunn, we've held our cash close, and it's served us well. In record high inflation, we are able to potentially cash purchase items that we used to have to borrow. We were able to get a almost 1% interest rate on our bonds in past years because of our strong cash position. But now with 40-year high inflation, you're not going to see a 1% bond anymore. We'd be lucky if we saw a 5% bond. And that would be doing well. So the governor's budget proposal takes those items that we normally would fund with bonds and allows us and moves it into funding them with cash. It's a savings that will save our children and grandchildren millions. And it's an extremely smart and prudent move given the current economy. So when you flip back into the GISFIC part of your budget, you'll see where we've taken and cash funded a multitude of items that normally would be bond funded. One of those will be the University of North Georgia STEM project. The Senate also added 1/3 of our funding for the Middle Georgia State University capital request. There's funding for a medical school in Athens. There's one-time funding for a dental school in Savannah. $4.6 million in the Senate proposal to continue to purchase the Augusta Transition Center for the Department of Transportation. Approximately $300,000 to outfit new trooper posts in Oconee and Fulton counties. $3 million, as I mentioned before, the request was $6 million, but $3 million for uninterrupted power supplies for our state's election machines. $6 million to match federal funds to expand the Port of Brunswick. $100,000 to begin a study for a veterinary school at Fort Valley State University. And the pull forward of a project that's approximately $5 million at Georgia Southern University. These are projects that you normally would see in the FY25. You're seeing them in the 24 because of the prudent budgeting that we've had because of our governor. And I think these are projects that all of us can support, especially at the lower dollar amount that our citizens will face based upon the savings we've been able to produce over these past few years. As we begin to close, I do want to mention that all the items in the budget that you see don't get accomplished because of what we do right here. We pass a budget, but we then rely on state employees to implement that budget. and the ideas that we pass. And we have roughly three different buckets. I'm going to focus on one here today, though. Different buckets of employees. We have our local school teachers. You've heard what we've been able to do for them over the past. The average salary now and average pay for a teacher in Georgia is between $65,000 and $69,000. That's not telling you that every teacher's paid $65,000 to $69,000. I'm telling you what the average is. Some are higher, some are substantially higher, and some are lower. At our region that we have here at our state, and you can look at the Georgia Data Analytics Center and see how pay goes across regions. But I want to focus on the 55,000 state employees who are everybody else. Of those 55,000 state employees, roughly, this isn't roughly, this is an exact number, 29,346 of those make less than $39,999 a year. They make less than 40 grand. I'm going to highlight who those are for us for a second. 2,280 employees at the Department of Behavioral Health, the folks that we trust to provide the mental health services for bills that we've passed over these past 5 years, make less than $40,000. The average pay at the agency is $52,377. At our community service boards, again, due to the Olmstead Act, the way we actually provide mental health services in our communities, 3,355 of those employees make less than $40,000 a year. The average pay for the entire agency at community service boards is $49,000. At the Department of Corrections, which you've heard highlighted in media and highlighted by us, and new technology that we're going to implement across our state, 2,097 employees make less than $40,000 a year. The average salary at corrections is $48,398. At our Department of Human Services, I'm going to separate these out because I do think it's important. DFACS by itself, 3,251 employees make less than $40,000 a year. The average annual salary at DFACS, just the DFACS part of DHS, is $44,000. Our caseworking starting salary is $41,000. Those are the folks who are doing the care with children. If you look across the agency as a whole, you still have another 1,203 employees at DHS. Those are not DFACS employees. Those are mostly our eligibility service folks you hear right now who are checking eligibility. Their pay is $39,999 or less. We have 1,262 employees at the Department of Juvenile Justice whose pay is less than $40,000 a year. The average salary there is $49,352. 532 employees at the Department of Natural Resources. The average salary there is a little bit higher. It's $56,000. 1,405 employees at the Department of Technical College System of Georgia, rather. The average pay there is $58,000. And 1,474 employees at the Department of Transportation, where the average salary is $58,000. I think we owe those folks a round of applause for the implementation of over 300, the 1,000 bills we introduce, the 300 bills they're able to implement, and the 11 million people that, because of the 40 days that we get to spend up here passing budgets and passing laws, they spend 365 days implementing it and trying to make sure children and families are safe. I think we owe them a round of applause. What you have before you, you've had a chance to flip through it. You've heard my summary. If there are any questions, I'll take them now, and if not, at the right time, we'll take a motion. Take a motion. We got a question from, I think it's Chair Lady Kirkpatrick. Sorry. Motion? Okay. Motion from Senator Kirkpatrick, second by the Pro Tem. Any further discussions? All those in favor of passing House Bill 915 as amended by the Senate Appropriations Committee, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Thank you. And we're on to our third bill now. Representative Leverett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I appreciate very much, Mr. Chairman, the opportunity to present this bill so early in session. This is House Bill 947. It's a bill that will reform the compensation structure for state-paid judges, and that's an important distinction. This is state-paid judges, judges that are actually state employees. That's judges of the Supreme Court, Court of Appeals, statewide business court, and Superior Court. And that's the scope of this bill. It doesn't go any broader because those are the only judges in our system that are state-paid and state employees. This bill will alleviate problems in the existing structure and provide a path forward to support a strong, independent, and high-performing judiciary. Mr. Chairman, I'm mindful of the hour. I'm also mindful of the limitations on time. I do not want the chair upset with me, and I certainly do not want Chairman Parrish upset with me, so I will try to be very brief here. I also understand that this committee has already heard a fairly lengthy presentation involving some of this bill, so I will try just to hit the highlights and sort of refresh the committee's recollection. First, the bill does not appropriate or fund or set any salary. It does not obligate the state to pay any rate of pay. It actually amends an existing statute to remove the dollar amount that is set out in there for these salaries and replaces it instead with a maximum. So in a sense, that does restrict our appropriation authority, but I would assume that is a restriction we would welcome. It then allows the General Assembly to appropriate whatever rate of pay it deems to be appropriate. Second, the bill tries to, extricate us, at least superior courts now, from that uniquely odd system we have where they have local supplements, in which the local supplements have taken on such a large proportion of pay for these people who are supposed to be state employees. And I think many of us know that local supplement structure has caused wide variations in pay among Superior Court judges throughout the state, and even has resulted in some judges of Superior Courts making more than our appellate judges do, which I think is somewhat of an upside down arrangement. So what we're trying to do with this is we are still allowing some local supplementation of salary. We're calling it locality pay, and it will be limited to 10% of whatever the state salary is. So this recognizes some variation for cost of living, but not the wide disparity we have seen, which really doesn't bear any relation to that. After all, the way we structure the judicial circuits, we design them so that every judge in every circuit is supposed to have roughly the same caseload, so they should have roughly the same pay. So that's the second thing the bill does. And the third thing the bill does is there are many localities that couple pay of state officials to judicial pay. And so we're fixing that, or we're trying to suspend that so that local jurisdictions will have some time next year to make any adjustments they deem appropriate without having any increases foisted upon them against their will. The way the bill currently provides is that the local jurisdiction would have to affirmatively couple a salary to a state or to one of their local officials that are not judges. The coupling of judges would automatically resume. That is basically the sort of from a few miles up, the general overview and structure of the bill. Mr. Chairman, I would mention we've got a number of judges here with us today, but in the interest of time, I will not go through introductions. I just want the committee to know they are here, and they appreciate very much the committee's consideration of this bill. Oh, and that this bill, again, this was not my creation. This bill came to us from the Judicial Council. It represents a number of years of study and a great compromise among the judges impacted and the judges who are not impacted by it. It's been approved by the council.
Thank you, Representative Leverett. Any questions from the members of the committee? Chair Lady Kirkpatrick.
Thank you very much. I was not on the committee that was involved with the lengthy discussion that you're referring to about the bill. I just wondered about whether there was any conversation about the juvenile court judges during the process.
Well, I believe the council has has included them in their study, but since they are not directly state paid, they are not directly impacted by this bill. Now, they could be to the extent their pay is tied to Superior Court pay. But there has been consideration of juvenile court judges, and I thank the lady for her question. The bill as originally filed contemplated the formation of a commission to study all kinds of court compensation. After some reflection, we decided to remove that, but I have another bill, which may be coming to this committee or to the Senate, hopefully, that does set up a joint study committee to look at pay of the rest of the actors in the system: probate judges, magistrate judges, DAs, public defenders, and all of that. Thank you for the question.
Chairman Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Leverett, thanks for your work on this. So you stated that it sets a maximum pay, but I guess not a dollar amount. And I assume that you're referring to lines 333 through 336, so that we don't have Superior Court judges making more than Supreme Court justices.
That's one of the goals, yes, sir. It tries to set a gradation where the maximum is stated as a percentage of a base amount, which is U.S. District Court pay. And the percentage for the Supreme Court is 100% of that, and then it slowly moves down until we get to Superior Court where it's 90%. But again, that's a maximum, not an appropriated amount.
Mr. Chairman, can I follow up?
Yes, sir.
Representative Leverett, is there a maximum dollar figure in here anywhere, or would that be established by separate legislation or appropriations?
It would. Well, the actual salary is always going to be set by appropriation. So to be clear there, the only limit in this bill on your appropriating authority is you can't go above a certain amount, which is expressed as a percentage of that base pay. The actual amount is not in here. That would be determined by whatever the district court pay for 2 years back at the time when you're making the appropriation was.
Chairman Dolezal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Representative. Two questions for you. One, I've heard that the cost of this is approximately $22 million if passed as is. I'd just like you to clarify if that's the case and correct me if that's not the case. And then secondly, you referenced this was subject to a good bit of negotiation. Can you let us know what maybe the top two negotiating points were and how you guys landed where you are and what the pushback was and perhaps in that negotiation?
Thank you. So as to your first question, this bill itself does not impose that cost. If the legislature were to fund all of these positions at the maximum set, I believe it would be $22 million, if that was all done in 1 year. But this bill does not mandate that you do that. You can leave pay where it is. It would restrict the counties in their supplements, but it would not. In other words, that is a potential cost if you choose to fund everything at 100%, but that is not mandated by the bill itself. Passing the bill will not cause that to increase. You still retain discretion as an appropriator to set the salary at amount you deem appropriate. You just can't go over that number. And as to the negotiating points, I confess I was not involved in the Judicial Council's discussion and the study over those years, so I don't know what the points of contention were, but we do have some judges here who could address that issue for the chairman if you'd like.
Senator Jones, Emmanuel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Representative, for bringing this legislation. Can you comment on the locality supplemental compensation, and how did the council arrive at a 10% number?
I'm afraid I can't comment on the back and forth on how they arrived at that number, but I believe the intention there is to try to keep what are currently the supplements from becoming such a large portion of the pay. I do think that one of the sort of policy perspectives of this bill is that state employee judges should receive their compensation primarily from the state. you know, they're interpreting and construing and enforcing state laws that we pass in this building. They occasionally do construe and interpret local laws in zoning cases, but primarily their function is one that would have statewide application. That's why we've made them state employees, and so that's where the bulk of their pay should come. But we are acknowledging that there are some cost of living differences and other kinds of local factors that can come into play, but that should be limited to 10% of whatever the state pay is. I don't know how that number precisely was reached, but I think the intention is to make the supplements play less of a significant role in compensation so that you don't have such wide variation in pay. For example, right now, some judges in this state are receiving what amounts to basically the 45th highest pay. So they're toward the bottom. Others receive the 5th highest. We're trying to average that out to a number that's, while it's not the very top, is at least not quite in the basement. Thank you.
All righty. We have any other questions? No other questions. There's a lot of discussion on this one. Do you have anything you want to add? Motion? I think we're gonna send it to subcommittee, unless you were gonna make them. Were you gonna make a motion? Gotcha. I think we're gonna send it to a subcommittee. We're gonna appoint a subcommittee. It's gonna be the chair, the vice chair, and the chair of the subcommittee on judiciary. And we'll look forward to working with Chairman Leverett on that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate that opportunity.
Is there any other business to come before the committee? Thank you for your presence here. Take a motion to adjourn. Second. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Thank you.